Thank you. So thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for my colleague from Estonian Lighting Designer Association. I will try to share with you some approach of lighting design, new trends, and how I think the public lighting will evolve in the future. And we will try to travel a little bit further in the future at the end of the presentation. So, lighting design. So this is my profession. When I started a long time ago, in France, we were only 2 or 3 lighting designers in 1987. And I tried to give a French name to that is concepteur lumière, because there was no way to define what role we could do and play into the city environment and in the architecture or in the interior design environment. So lighting design is now a profession that is quite established in France. In fact, we have a French association of lighting designers that is right now celebrating its 30th birthday, 30. So we are very pleased with that, and we do have around 120 lighting designers, professional lighting designers working in France, and many of them work worldwide. So I will share, before starting the topic, I will share some project, but without describing it because it would be too long, just to show you how large now is the range of fields we are working with as lighting designer. When we started with my studio CONCEPTO, we were really dedicated to landscape, nightscape, we called them, and to public spaces. And in 1991, there was the first national competition in Nantes for renewing totally the city center of Nantes, redesigning it. And that was the first time that client, the city of Nantes, asked for a lighting designer to be integrated into the team of architect, urban planner, and landscape architect. And since then, we have been very lucky because a lot of national competition and even international competition ask for a pluridisciplinary team with all kind of different approach and disciplines. And I think this is also very helpful for our profession to be asked to be part of a team, whatever we work on a public space or design, an architecture or interior design. So from public space, that was not that obvious at that time. We slowly start to work also with architects from the very beginning of the project, sometime at the very early stage, on sketch stage, defining what could be architectural lighting and defining how we could integrate the lighting into the facade or the double skin, as we called it. And it was very important because at that time, LEDs did not exist. We had some very big projectors, big source that need to be hidden as much as possible. So if you can work from the very beginning, it's very helpful to integrate the things and to make the lighting fixture and the lighting installation as invisible as possible. So we do work on many different buildings, bridges, as you will see, mobilities, transport, collective transport. And I would say each project is different. And this is fantastic in our profession because we move from one project to another project. And we move also from one world to another world. So you can work on a mining site one day just to highlight it, to enhance it for touristic purpose. And the day after, you go to a Gothic cathedral. And then you go to a social housing district. And every time we're learning something, every time we try to discover something. And working worldwide as well in many countries, many cultures, many different approach and traditions. It's something fantastic that makes us very curious and that makes the profession of lighting designer so interesting. So this is an advertisement. You can become lighting designer. You will never get bored, that's for sure. At the very beginning, we were starting making architectural lighting for historical monuments. We had a long tradition of what was called son et lumière, that was sound and light, and started in 1950s by some pioneer, especially on the castle of the Loire River. But then, at the beginning of I would say, renewal of our profession, we started also to be asked to illuminate some monuments, heritage building. And well, we had the chance to win the competition for Notre Dame, Cathedral Notre Dame of Paris. And this was something very incredible because it took us 19 years to achieve this project. We won the competition in 1989, and we finished it, so the construction work in third phase, on 2008. And as you might know, it burned totally 5 years ago. So we learned from that as a lighting designer, we need to be stubborn, but for sure, we need to be also humble, because now I have a lot of years of experience behind me, but most of my projects, they don't exist anymore. Because very often a project is architectural lighting could last like 20, 25 years maximum. And now even less than that, sometime after 10 years, people get bored or the client wants something more trendy. So yeah, you need to be very humble, because you might create some project that you are very proud of, and then you will see them disappearing. And well, fortunately enough, you can get pictures and you can get records. But sometimes, if I want to show some project to my son, it's not possible anymore. But it's okay. I like this idea of doing things that are, in a way, ephemeral. And with LEDs, we all know that things will be even shorter, because some project will last only 10 years. So this is very important, even in the design, in the concept, and the way to think differently. Instead of being like a landscape architect that plant trees for centuries, hopefully, or even some architects that makes buildings. And Cathedral Notre Dame was built between 1260 to 1320. So he has been here, even if it has been restored and renewed. So this is very important also to think about that. And then you can be more free to create some project and some I would say nightscape that are different, because you think, okay, we can try, we can test, it will be there maybe 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, and it would be something that people will remember and memorize. So in a way, it's a very, very important issue. We also worked a lot, as I say, abroad in many, many countries. We have the chance to work in China since 2008. So it has been quite a long time already. And that where we discovered the idea of nocturnal tourism, because most of the cities there ask us to create some nightscape and architectural lighting just to develop the tourism at night, in order to increase this tourism and increase also the income for the city. And we did very huge project. This project, for example, is a 10 kilometers long project. So it was fantastic for us to develop a nightscape on 10 kilometers long river and canal. But it was in a Chinese speed. It was only 9 months to install 55,000 fixtures. So working in China, you learn a lot, and you discover the capacity of Chinese people to do incredible things. We work also with landscape architect in park, contemporary park or historical park. And as I say, we work on collective transportation. And this is very interesting, because when you work on a tramway line or a subway line or even a bus line, you do lighting design on a very, very long trajectory. Sometimes it's 10 kilometers, 12 kilometers. So you have to think of creating ambiances, of creating sequences, hosting the people, using light also to be able to for the public and the visitors to understand where is the transportation, how you get there. You have to wait, you have to be able to be pleased and welcomed by the lighting. So it's very, very interesting for lighting designer. And this is quite new as well. At the beginning, when we started the studio, we were never asked to do so. And we had also, as Marilyn said, the chance to define what could be lighting master plan and what we call at that period light urbanism. And we did more than 150 lighting master plan since 1987, since the first one. And we did this one in 2011 in the city of Chongqing in China. That is supposed to be the biggest city in the world. It's 34 million people living in Chongqing. So it was an incredible experience to discover this city and to develop and to present this lighting master plan. And now we are doing in France already second generation of lighting master plan and even third generation of lighting master plan. And this is also normal because it's like a urban planning study. It doesn't have to be a Bible. It can be changing and renewing. So we are asked to renew some of the lighting master plan we did or some of lighting master plan that was done by others, by colleagues. And this is also very interesting because for sure, sometimes the main issue is energy saving, but it's also renovating all the sources to LEDs. And it gives us a chance also to think if still some architectural lighting are necessary or if we can shut them down and make maybe, as I will explain later on, more darkness invited into the city. And we do also lighting strategy. So the difference between lighting strategy is that we work on a very, very large scale, but maybe not as detailed as a lighting master plan. We don't give any prescription. This strategy was an international competition for the Bank River of Shanghai on the Huangpu River. It was on 21 kilometers long, and we work again with the landscape architect and urban planner to develop this strategy and start to implement it year after year. And we do also projects that sometimes are quite crazy, especially in China. Like we did this media facade lighting on a 13 kilometers long avenue with LEDs covering all the facade. It was just very, very strange to develop so many fixtures. And this is again used for tourist development. And Chengdu is the capital of the panda. I don't know if you have been in Chengdu, but this is the only place in the world where panda are living wild. And the government asked us if we could make with video designers some kind of advertising about all the tradition and culture of Chengdu, including the panda. So it was a lot of fun. And it's still there. So again, if you go to China, I encourage you to discover this project. And we try also to be a little bit disruptive, to create what we could call crazy ideas. So we came out with the idea of making virtual illumination, or what we called at that time Illuminations 2.0. Because we were in a city, the city of Rennes, when we just finished the lighting master plan and the dark infrastructure. And the authority, they asked us to do some project or some studies for architectural lighting. So we, as we usually do, we say, okay, what would be the budget? And they say, well, we don't have budget. We don't want to spend too much money. So maybe you could find some ideas to make architectural lighting with very few expenses. And then I say, okay, why don't we do it with an app on smartphone or tablet? So people will look at the architectural lighting virtually, but they won't look at it in real. And they love the idea. So we developed it. We developed a special app. And then you are geolocalized. And when you are nearby 50 meters of the building, you can discover on your smartphone, on your tablet, the architectural lighting. And you won't see anything on the facade, nothing for real. So it's quite cheap. It was very interesting. We did 11 virtual illuminations. And it was quite a success because we had an award with the French Lighting Designer Association. So, talking about the topic of mutation of urban lighting and lighting in public spaces, when I started, that was the kind of lighting we could find almost everywhere in France, but not only in France, in many cities in the world. And well, unfortunately, when you travel as I do, you can see this kind of lighting in many cities still. So it was really, I would say, functional. For me, it was sad. It was very banal. I did not understand when I started. why public lighting should be as monotonous and banal as this, because my background was fine art school and electronical engineering. I did both studies in the same time. But as an artist, I thought we could be more creative, more original, and not doing public lighting that would be so simple, so classic, so banal. So it's why I started this profession, and I wanted to dedicate my work, even my artistic work, to city and public lighting. So I was always surprised that city lighting is very regular. Street lighting is really classical, with poles very regularly implemented on the pavement. And when I look to the evolution of urban planning with, I would say, more and more politics to restrain the cars into, and the traffic of the cars into the city, to develop pedestrian area, to generalize that the speed should not be over 30 kilometers per hour, I thought, why are we still doing public lighting the same way like it has been for so much decades? So for sure, there is evolution even for lighting designer doing public lighting. This is the kind of example that you can see in some cities, in many countries. So we can really create the lighting and design the lighting to take in account the pedestrian, to take the pedestrian as the main, would say, main stakeholder inside the site. But still, maybe there will be a different approach, and because of the evolution of cities, we could think differently. So we do have a lot of constraint, a lot of issues, sometimes very contradictory. As lighting designer, when I started, we were really quite free. We could do project without any norms, any regulation, any kind of demands about energy consumption or even about biodiversity or protecting environment. But nowadays, the profession of lighting designer is really facing a lot of demands, and we need to be very accurate and very, I would say, professional, and we need to educate ourselves all the time because things are changing very quickly. So just to share with you some of the contemporary challenges we're facing, we do face a societal challenge. That means that many cities now are living at night, some of them 24 hours per day. And when you travel around the world, some cities you can go at 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning, you still find transportation, you still find food shops open, markets sometime, and street food in many cities. So they do need lighting. It was not like that 50 years ago, but now we face that we need lighting at very late time of the day. We need also to think about how the challenge for social balance is important with light. Because light is very important in many aspects. And when you study some cities, you discover that city center are sometimes overlit with a lot of investment. And as soon as you go to the suburb or to the district that are less rich, you discover that lighting could be very poor, even non-existing. So we need also, as lighting designer, to find a balance and to try to equilibrate all these demands. And we have an energy challenge. Even if sometimes the price of energy is changing and evolving very quickly, we still have a big energy challenge in many countries in the world. And we need also to think as lighting designer, how much energy we're going to spend every time we make a project. It could be architectural lighting, but it could be also public lighting or landscape lighting. We have for sure technological challenge. I am old enough to have been facing a lot of different sources, from high pressure sodium, mercury lamp, and all metal halide with ceramic burners and everything that has almost disappeared now, unless in some cities, like in Tallinn, I still saw some mercury lamp vapor yesterday night making the visit. So it was a kind of travel to the past. But LED's revolution is challenging, and now we are all working with that. I would say since 10 years, we're making project and design only with LEDs, and we don't think anymore about any other sources. And for sure, we have an environmental challenge, and I will talk a bit later about light pollution and preservation of nocturnal biodiversity. So what is nocturnal urbanism and lighting master plan? We try to organize or to think about how could we plan the night, how could we plan the urban lighting at night time. And sometimes it's very different from daytime. So sometimes urban planning on daytime is very different from urban planning on nighttime. And it's why we developed this methodology of lighting master plan in 1987. And this was behind that the idea to create a tool, to propose this tool to authorities and to the city engineers, and to help them to define what could be a strategy for renovating urban lighting, creating urban lighting, developing architectural lighting, landscape lighting, and so on and so on. So I won't get into it in details. I know that there will be a session of questions later on, so I would be very pleased to answer them, but I will try to go ahead and showing you some of the lighting master plan we have been doing. At the very beginning, as I said, a lot of people were interested to apply or to highlight the landscape. And we had the chance to do this lighting master plan in a city that was UNESCO classified in China. And it was a project on a river, many rivers getting into the city on 5 kilometers long. So we first studied the city history and geography, the topography. When you do a lighting master plan, you have to get in account a lot of data and information. And from there, you move and you try to develop a strategy that could be implemented. And that, in that case, because it was also for tourist development, we tried to take into account all the tradition of this part of China, including because this city was at one period the capital of Taoism philosophy. So we really relied on this Taoism philosophy, and even we defined the colors we could use. And it's why we choose that jade colors, the most blue-green color of jade could be the main color that we could use, because jade was a very important material for Taoism culture and traditions. So you will have on the upper left how it was before we started to implement the project. The city has to face a huge earthquake in 2008, so almost everything was destroyed, including the lighting of the rivers. And we were asked to rethink and to renew it and to do something totally different. And there was, for sure, at that time, a lot of projector, very powerful, with a lot of glare. So we tried to make a project that won't make any glare, that will create a nightscape just relying on this color of jade and in complementary ways, the color of gold, playing with a very important property of the eye vision. It's to saturate the eye vision with colors. So we create all this nightscape along 5 kilometers with these two colors. And it was something very, very new for Chinese population, because they used to have already what I call the RGB craziness, so the red, green, blue changes craziness, with people having all these kind of colors. And we decided to not give any possibility of making RGB changes. So that was a kind of trick. Because when we finished the project, they asked us, okay, can we make it red, for example, for Christmas or for another period, for Lantern Day? And I say, no, sorry, you cannot make it red. This is only the only color you can have. And well, they were a little bit surprised, but everything was installed on 5 kilometers, so that was okay. And they loved it. And we developed the tourism multiplied by 3. And I was there just 2-3 years ago, and it's still there. It shifted a little bit. It's very interesting because the color has shifted a little bit because the flux is not having the same life cycle, but still it's there. And so again, if you travel to China, go to Zhejiang. It's in Sichuan, just nearby Chengdu. So you can visit both pandas and this project, and you will discover it. And it was fantastic to work there because there was so many things to enhance and to highlight. all this covered bridge and details of architecture. And so we created some special lanterns. We developed almost all the fixture, especially, and it was a lot of fun and a lot of interest. And people like it. Even the residents, we did not do that only for tourists. We did it also for the residents, because all along these banks there is hundreds of bars, beers bar. So people will go there and take a drink and eat some shrimps with a lot of spicy Sichuan pepper. And they love to stay there and just look to the nightscape. So when you do that, this is the reward of being a lighting designer, because we spend so much time on study, defining everything, making calculation, making tests, mock-up, going on site. And then slowly and slowly, the project is getting alive. And finally, you put it on, and you see people so pleased, so happy about this kind of project. So this is, in a way, the best thing we can have as a lighting designer, to be fan. And we also did some architectural lighting on the pagoda and temples all around, to relate these buildings with the nature. And again, this was part of Taoism philosophy that really enhanced the symbiosis between human and nature. So for us, it was very important to keep and to stick to this tradition of Taoism. And for them, they said that it was one of the first ecological approach in the world, and it was 2,000 years ago. So Chinese, are very good sellers, so they think that they could say Taoism was the first ecology, philosophy, and politic. So we try also to define things, and we were asked to make a new strategy, architectural lighting strategy for the city of Paris, because there was, at that time, a new climate plan and the necessity of reducing the energy. So the city of Paris asked us to create a new lighting strategy for buildings, architectural, and we thought that we should stop to do heritage lighting, because there was already, as you can see, a lot of heritage lighting in Paris, 341 exactly. So we make a huge diagnostic. It took us 1 year to diagnostic and analyze all the existing heritage lighting. And because there was so much heritage lighting with so much energy consumption, we proposed to switch to something totally different. And for that, we had to really understand where are the people at night. And I think this is a very important question, because sometimes we are asked as lighting designer to light a church, or to light a wall, or a castle, or tower. And when we go there at 10 p.m., there is no one looking at it. And you think, wow, I've been doing all this work, and for whom? So we thought that we could reverse the process, start to understand where are the people at nighttime. And we had the chance to have some study from what they are called now night geographer. That means geographers specialize in night analysis. And they define by period of 2 hours, where are the people all night long. They get a lot of data from mobile phone, from subway ticket, for even credit card distributor. And they gave us this kind of maps that help us to understand where are the people depending on the time of the night. So instead of, as you can see, many of existing, all these little stars are existing heritage lighting. Many of them are outside of the active zone where the people are at night. So this was so strange for us. So we tried to convince, and we succeed to convince the authority to use this active night, what we call active nights, and to do lighting where the people were living and staying, instead of just lighting some church, because the church are not seen anymore at nighttime. So we propose to do this kind of lighting on new architectures, on public equipments for the residents, like schools, cultural centers, sports centers, and to work only on the building that have been built just 10 years before we started the strategy. So to reverse this idea of always highlighting heritage building to very contemporary building, and building that are used by people, because people are not using church every single day, but at least school and other building from the municipality, they are used every day. So we started to do that. The study and the strategy were approved, and they gave us the commission to do so. And since then, we already designed like almost 30 architectural lighting. So I will go very quickly. So it was very important to do simple architectural lighting using color, because in Paris, everything was white, and also to focus on energy consumption in order to reduce energy consumption. And in some cases, we work with the director of the school or even the kids in some kindergarten, for example, and we went there and explained what we wanted to do even to the kids, and they were participating, choosing the colors sometime, and it was a lot of fun. So we did realize quite a lot of buildings. You have here some example of what have been realized, and we call it the light map. And well, there is many buildings that are already lighted, and I think in a way we balanced. We were also willing to shut off some of the existing heritage lighting, but we did not convince authority to do so, and they kept it. But we really reduced the energy consumption, as you can see, and it was a very important issue for everyone. So light pollution. Some of my colleagues already talked about light pollution, so I will go quite quickly about this topic that is very important. And again, if you have questions later on, it would be very nice to answer you. So light pollution is getting a huge issue, I would say, everywhere in the world, because we now understand and know better about what artificial lighting is doing, including intrusive lighting, to I would say, harm the people even in their apartment. And for sure, we raised with researchers and biologists this idea of preserving biodiversity. If you are aware, we are facing the 6th extinction of biodiversity right now. So we really need to be careful and to try to do as much as possible, even as lighting designers. So because we're using artificial light, and most of the recent studies and research prove that artificial light is really harming and killing a lot of spaces. For example, one high-pressure sodium lamp will kill 150 insects every night. So think about that. Think that in some cities there is thousands and thousands artificial sources. Like in Tallinn, I heard that it's 72,000 lamps. So think that 72,000 lamps multiplied by 150 insects could be very damaging. So we do need to think about that. We know that the species that are living at night represent the majority, and we can do something for that. For sure, as we will see later on, we can also not light, we can use darkness, but if we do some lighting, we can really take that in account. And in France, we have the chance to have a new regulation, a law, since the December 27, 2018. And this law is really restrictive. I will not go again in details, but two things. For example, we cannot use color temperature above 3000 K. And even in the future, they will be review it, and it might be 2700 K maximum. So that means it's not allowed at all to have any source that would be above 3000 K. And the second thing, just as an example, because we have a lot of prescription, is that uplighting is totally forbidden everywhere in France, outdoor. So that means it changed totally also the way to make lighting design and to study the design of any single public lighting or architectural lighting. And when I see some of the example, we can see even here in Tallinn, for sure, there is a lot of uplighting, both private and public. And this is not possible anymore in France since 2018. So we do know now a lot of things about the potential, the bad potential of artificial lighting on wildlife, on animals, but as well on vegetation and plants, on flora. So knowing that, as a lighting designer, we are responsible to really propose something differently and taking care of that issue of preserving biodiversity. So fortunately enough, we do know now which spectrum is good or less harming for many species. It's not that easy because some species, like the fishes, batrachian, they will prefer blue or blue-green light. Some others, like bats, will only accept some red lights because they don't see this red light. All the others, they will really get disturbed by them. And some other species, it's still, again, different. So when you do a project, it's very important to understand which kind of species will be in the site where you are working on. And it's also very important to make some prescription, and it's why when we work on dark infrastructure that I will show you later on, we take into account all these inventories of spaces, and we try to take the right solution or to propose the right solution, including with color changing on tunable white, depending of what we are doing. So, for example, we do this kind of project. For example, this landscape project was in a site where there was a lot of bats living there, and we made this proposal of red lighting for preserving bats as much as possible. And we discovered that people enjoy it as well. So the project is still there. It was in 2015, so 10 years ago, and it's still working. And we try to evaluate. It's very complicated to evaluate the impact of the project or the impact of the new solution on the spaces, because you need to have inventories before and after. But, well, with bats, it's quite easy because you can record the sound of bats, and you can understand and know if there is more bats that after the project that there was before the project. So with bats, it's quite easy. But if you are talking of night butterfly or other kind of spaces, evaluation is really complicated, and I think we need, with biologists and ecologists, to really improve about this. But as some colleagues say, we need also to not light all night long or during all the seasons. We know, for example, that at the beginning of the night and at the end of the night, this is the peak of activity for most of the species that live at night. And also we know that, for example, bats are sleeping during wintertime. So maybe we can create some lighting that could be used in wintertime instead of being used in summertime. So we can think according to seasons, and we can think according to the period of the night. And this is all the way we are thinking now and the way we are designing with all this in our mind. So it's why we're promoting more and more how we could restore darkness into cities, because I think it's very important to not forget that darkness is part of our life. For sure, to see the Milky Way like here in the desert of Atacama in Chile is not possible for everyone in the world. There is an issue about seeing stars that is not possible in many, many, many places in the world, and Milky Way is even more difficult to see. But when you have the chance to see it, you cannot forget about it, and you can really have something as, I would say, a world heritage to be able to see the Milky Way. So we try from the very beginning, this was 23 years ago, to promote darkness into city environment, and making, for example, a lighting of an avenue that was transformed in pedestrian places with 1/3 of quite bright lighting for people that like bright lighting, and 2/3 of the space that would be totally dark. And as you can see, people prefer, and we made a lot of evaluation and inquiries, and we discovered that people prefer to stay in the dark side instead of being under the bright environment. So we can promote that. We made a test on 200 meters, and after the test, Greek authorities and municipality of Athens, they accepted the project, and we could install it because this was just before the Olympic Games in 2004 in Athens, and we did 2 kilometers long of this project. And in some countries, like in China, they really enjoy also when we propose some dark environment. People are really pleased to go at night when the sun is down, because in many, many parts of China, it's really, really hot during a long season. It could be 39 degrees, 40, 32 degrees. So people are waiting until the sun is down, until it's getting fresh. And I do think with unfortunately, the global warming, we will rediscover the night as a resource, because we will wait for fresh environment and fresh time. And as soon as the sun will be down, we will be very happy to go outside. So as lighting designer, it's important also to promote this idea of balancing darkness and lighting, and to propose at nighttime some new environment. So which strategy can we use and which strategy can we develop to rediscover this darkness and to preserve biodiversity? And it's what we try to develop a new methodology that we call dark infrastructure. The idea is really to balance the lighting and the darkness in a city environment. I'm not talking of being outside the city, in a forest, in a swamp, or whatever, on a desert, or near the sea. I'm really talking of urban environment. And I do think that we can create some dark places at some time of the day, of the night, or at some time of the year. And we can also create some lighting, for sure, and we can balance it, and we can also map it and try to convince authorities that this is something we could really do, and we could also educate the citizen and sometimes the politics in this kind of approach. So we have been doing almost more than 30 dark infrastructures since 10 years, and in many, many countries, including in China or in Saudi Arabia and even in Africa. So I think this will be also a very important issue and a very important new approach in the future into public lighting. So just some example briefly. We do some of this dark infrastructure very often. It's on the same time we do a lighting master plan and a dark infrastructure, so we can comply with both aspects, and we do give prescription about the lux level, about the color temperature, about the typology of light, about the way of lighting, the period of lighting, and so on and so on, and also using sensors to detect if there is human beings or not, or if there is only biodiversity. And from that, we can really give a tool, again, a new tool for city development, and in order to give to the engineer of the city the possibility to develop a dark infrastructure respectful of the environment. So we did also a lot of these studies in Switzerland, because they really, in Switzerland, they really enjoy to create this dark environment. Sometimes we make experimentation on some specific site, and then we can interview the residents and the neighbors and see if they accept it, because education and consultation is very important in this kind of methodology. And what we do is also very interesting, is making dark infrastructure at the moment of the study and think of this dark infrastructure for the future. For example, here in 2035, because we were asked by the authority, this is a river that is 250 kilometers long, Kanchang River, and we were asked if there will be new cities built, there will be new urbanization spreading out. How could we master that? And with the dark infrastructure, how we could think about the darkness in the future, taking in account these new cities and taking in account the possibility of lowering the light pollution and mastering the light pollution. So this kind of studies is very interesting, because again, we give a tool to the authorities, including to master light pollution in the future. And we were also asked to do this kind of dark infrastructure in a very specific approach, like star watching tourism, but is under development in many, many places in the world as well. So we did work in Saudi Arabia on this amazing site that is an archaeological site. It's the middle of a desert. It would be a very, very developed tourism places. It's already under construction. A lot of very famous architects are working there. And we were asked to make a lighting master plan. And even from the very beginning, we thought that we should do also a dark infrastructure and propose both lighting master plan and dark infrastructure, because most of the heritage sites are UNESCO classified. So the idea was really to imagine new way of discovering heritage building, for example, without any permanent lighting or any permanent electrical infrastructure, but giving projectors to the people at the hotel. And then you will be guided fully by a lighting designer, And with your projector, you will create some lighting just during the time you are there. And you come back with your projector back to the hotel, and you give it back to the reception. And then you can look to the Milky Way, and you don't pollute the site, and you can really be participating into the heritage lighting without destroying anything. And we promote also the idea of autonomous lamp that people could carry on. And again, all this to be able to discover the sky and to discover the stars and not polluting the site and the area. So they try to get classification by Dark Sky Association. I don't know if you are familiar with Dark Sky Association classification, but a lot of sites and cities that try to be star glazing sites. And in France, we have also one in the south of France that's called Pic du Midi. It's a chain of mountains that they are star glazing classified. So to go ahead, what we try every time, keeping in mind that we want to rediscover darkness, is to give autonomy to the end users. So end user could be bikes, could be pedestrian. So every time we try to use a new approach, for example, phosphorescent material, phosphorescent paintings, or phosphorescent stones, instead of having, again, permanent infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, or lighting infrastructure, we try to think differently. And we also promote autonomous portable lamps, so people will have the possibility to go at night whenever they want, having more freedom and more independency, but again, without creating a very, very long and very strong light infrastructure. So we developed that with some manufacturer recently, and we are installing them on public lighting, so that would be free. It's exactly like you're renting a bike. You could rent a lamp. It's very easy to do. And then you bring back the lamp to the pole. And well, that gives the opportunity in some sites to have darkness without being afraid of walking at night. And it gives you, as I said, a lot of freedom and independency. So to avoid this regularity of lighting poles, as I say, my dream is that maybe before I finish my profession, I would see some project without regular lighting poles along the street, trying to light mostly the road for cars. So we try to develop new approach dedicated to people, to creating some pedestrian ambience, creating what we call specific spaces at night. And I do think that with this kind of approach, we could not use anymore regularly poles, and we could, in some places, take away the public lighting and just having from place to place over possibility of going out at night and staying out at night without just being under the light all the time. So for sure, it's easy to do that into parks or into areas where there is not that much, I would say, circulation, but we can do it everywhere, and we can really make in public space some specific spaces that we call night lounge. And these specific spaces can also offer connectivity and maybe in the future interactivity. I know that the engineers and city responsible for lighting are very afraid of interactivity. They are afraid that citizens could choose the lighting, could choose the level of light, could choose the color, temperature. But I do think in the future we should have a more democratic lighting, offering the possibility to residents to decide which lighting they want, if they want darkness, if they want bright light. And maybe we could make a vote on a smartphone and decide what could be the lighting for a couple of hours and changing if the majority of the people decide to change it. So to finish with these new trends, we are working also a lot about bringing well-being and health into public space. And we try again to make some experiment. We just finished this garden 3 years ago, and we were using with the landscape architects some very specific colors that was used on the material, and also colored light according to the colors to saturate the colors. And we are making evaluation to understand if people feel better being in a pink environment or a yellow one or a purple one. And we do need some research about that. Unfortunately, very, very, very few research by neuroscientific about interaction between our brain and the colored light. And I hope that in the future we will have more information, more data, and we could really create some spaces according to what we can do. And we promote also darkness therapy. That means we take out the lighting and we do create some environment. For example, here with phosphorescent paintings, we create a fresco with an artist, a very young artist. And with this fresco, we took away all the public lighting, and we just have the phosphorescent painting that charge by daytime with the sun, and then restitute like 4 or 5 hours, depending on how many hours of sun we got. And then with your smartphone again, with the little flashlight of your smartphone, you can charge the painting again and you can play. And the kids are very good into that. They understand it very, very quickly, and they play a lot with that. So to finish with, we are also trying to develop circular economy for public lighting. So far, it's not that easy because people are used to throw away and to put in a garbage old poles and old luminaires. And with LEDs, sometimes it's quite difficult. So you can retrofit the LEDs. You can sometimes change the LEDs block into an old luminaire. But what we tried to do, and that was the work of my former studio, one of the last work we did for the village for the Olympic and Paralympic Games just last summer. They tried to use old pole because for this new district, there was a lot of old poles that were supposed to be thrown away in the garbage. So they decided to, if possible, to reuse these old poles and to redesign them in order to create some new solution. So I will not explain all the project because it's quite long to explain. But looking to the poles, this pole, there were 2 categories of poles. Some of them were using old scaffolding tubes as a bracket. So we got all these brackets for free. And some other were using 2 very old poles that was not used anymore to create a new design. So why we did that? Because the carbon footprint of the support is very, very important, as you can see here. 85% of carbon footprint of the lighting pole is by the support and only 15% by the luminaire. So because of also the program and the demand of the Olympic authorities, we were asked to be as possible responsible for protecting the environment. So the solution was really to take all these old poles that no one wanted anymore and to use them to sometimes to cut them and to readapt them. And with that, we succeed to really reduce the carbon footprint and to save a lot of CO2 emissions. So it was very, very interesting because it was a totally new way of looking to a project. And for us, it was something very important. So we could reduce the carbon impact by 50%. So this was really important. And in most of the projects that are now under competition in France, carbon impact is part of the demand. And it's something we need as lighting designer to calculate, sometimes with the help of engineering offices or environmental engineering offices. And into the project, the carbon impact is part of the proposal. And in some competition, the carbon impact will be a big, big criteria to win the project. So I think as lighting designer, we need also to take in account circular economy and with manufacturers and installators and public authorities to develop that. So to finish with, because time is just almost there, we will have new challenges for sure. They might be different than the one we had at the beginning of the lecture. And hopefully all this will be very usual in the future. Maybe in 20, 30 years, we could talk of democratic lighting and darkness therapy without people saying, what is that about? And well, I hope I will be able to see that. So we try to imagine, and I am fond of the future, and I do write some novels of science fiction because I love it, and I'm also a lover of science fiction movies, and I'm always surprised when I see science fiction movies that the public lighting is still made by poles along the street, you know? Like you can see, for example, Minority Report, the movie from Steven Spielberg. There is a street going up a building like that, with cars going up the building, and then there is lighting poles all along the street going up the building. So when I see that, I hope I could have the mobile phone of Steven Spielberg and call him and say, come on, guy, don't do that. I mean, there is so many things you could do in the future with lighting. You don't have to put lighting poles along a building, you know. So, well, I hope that with these new ideas, we could convince not only movie directors, but the public authorities to create new strategy. And this is very important because nighttime is 50% of our life. So I hope we can do creative and very disruptive things. Thank you.